Good afternoon. My name is Jay Rothman, and welcome to Real Men, Real Talk Raw. It is Monday afternoon, and the East Coast is about 2 p.m., just shortly thereafter. And I am excited to come live today with a guest. His name is Cristian Escobedo. Cristian, welcome to the studio.
Thank you very much for having me, Jay. It's a true blessing and honor.
Cristian and I, we met through a friend in common. Cristian is part of the Jessica Alstrom team. He has been working with her on a Quantum Revolution tour that's upcoming just about over a month from now in Las Vegas. And Las Vegas is, in fact, your home. So it's probably a blessing. And at the same time, it can be challenging at times because you're so close to where it's all going to come together. So there's probably some additional responsibilities that you and Amber have, both living in Las Vegas, but it's also a blessing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Traveling is fun. And we traveled Miami first and then to Thailand as like kind of a side stop for the tour. But being home is also really great and getting the community at home to get involved and hopefully join what we're doing will be amazing also.
Well, we haven't met face to face, but we have had a number of conversations offline through video chat and getting to know one another a little bit more so on the business side than on the personal side. The only thing that you had disclosed to me when I said to you, because it was brought to my attention that you were interested to come in the studio and share your backstory. The only thing I know about you is that you used to enjoy rolling the dice until you hit a bottom. Yeah. And so that was what you were going to come forward and share your story of what it was like to have a gambling addiction and what precipitated it, what led up to it, and how you have navigated through it and then come out on the other side, let's say clean and sober today of your gambling addiction. And so I was excited to have you on because I've shared many times over the course of my healing journey myself that I was challenged with 5 different addictions that had riddled my life. And I had no idea truly how impactful they had become to myself and to the people I cared about in my life until I had hit my rock bottom. And then I really took off the deep, deep, dark sunglasses and just ripped them off and was for the first time in my life willing to look at my own destructive behaviors and less on other people that were in my life. And so began my own healing journey. And so without further ado, Cristian, I'd love to invite you to just start sharing your story where it feels right for you and know that you are in a safe zone. If for something pops for you or a question that I bring up doesn't feel comfortable, you can set a boundary with me and just let me know, right now I'm just not ready to go there. And that'll be fine. I will accept that and I will love you for that. Before we do get going, I'd like to take a moment just to welcome those that have joined us live in the community that are here with us. Just acknowledge a few people. And if you could share with us where, in fact, in the U.S. or what country you are coming in from. I always love to know that so I can acknowledge that. We do have Pino Roberto coming in, Robert Dosa, Lacey coming in, Adele Jacobs. I know Adele is always coming in from South Africa. And one of these days, I am going to journey to South Africa. And we are going to spend some time together, Adele, myself, and a few other friends, including Mary. And I'm really excited to have that opportunity, as it's a dream of mine to make it to South Africa as well as it is Mary's. And so while we wait for more people to jump in live with us, Cristian, I'd like to invite you to begin sharing. We also have Debbie Garcia, who just joined in. She is the founder of Spirituality Gone Wild. Good morning, Debbie. And so Cristian, where do you want to begin? It's really up to you.
Yeah, so that's let's start peeling back the layers of the onion of this thing, because it's a deep one and it's a very impactful and very the process, you just got to love the process. So I'll start with this. I'll start with that suffering is the thing that will show you exactly where you are not free. And for me, this is a very, very deep understanding, a very truthful thing that completely changed my life. With addiction and with gambling, it was the one thing that destroyed everything around me so I can see who I really was. Because and it sounds kind of crazy to look at it from that perspective, but it's also the nonlinear perspective of looking at things. So the destruction around me had forced me to go inward and understand who I was, and understanding who I was taught me who I was not. So I was not the addict, and I was not the gambler, and I was not the crazy person that I was when I was in the addiction. But I was also needed that to get to who I am now, and who I'm going to be in the future also. And there's still a lot of learning for me there, and especially in regards to addiction too, because it is not something that will go away. It's something that you just understand and you learn to accept. And that's kind of what they teach in the 12-step programs too. Accept who you are and accept the things that you cannot change. So, but it also leads to a lot of healing and a lot of things that are necessary within the process of life and within the journey. And one of those things, it led me into, well, let's go back into the addiction part of it. The pain that was there, I lost a lot of things around me. I lost a lot of good relationships. I lost my wife at the time, so it caused a divorce, which was one of the most painful things that I've ever been through. And I would not wish that on anybody on the planet, but it's definitely something that opened my eyes into a whole new Christian. And the Christian that I started to love and started to understand more was a Christian that was dedicated to self-development and dedicated to understanding this process of life. And it opened the door into psychology, understanding psychology. It opened the door into self-development as an entrepreneur. It opened the door to being an entrepreneur. It opened the door to understanding energy and physics. It opened the door to understanding love, and also my passion and purpose on this planet. So if I was to look at what the addiction gave me as opposed to what it took away from me, it was probably one of the most important things in my life.
Beautiful. There's so many questions that are just flowing through me right now. So I'll just start with the first one. Is why do you think you were attracted to gambling as opposed to any other unhealthy behaviors that you could have easily been attracted to?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think there's two things that come to mind. The first thing is, well, with addiction in general, addiction is really replacing the connection. For me, it was, at least. So replacing the connection with something that I can fall in love with. And I've always been, and this is a deep passion and a deep purpose of my life, I've always been interested in economics and interested in building myself as an entrepreneur. And I found that gambling was kind of like the cheat for that. Like I could feel successful when I won. I could feel successful when things were going right. And I could try to figure it out when things were going wrong. And that's really kind of like an entrepreneur too, is like you want to try to figure out the problems, and you want the thrill and the rush of being successful. So when I started to channel the energy away from gambling into entrepreneurship, that was what I found psychologically that was keeping me in the addiction of gambling too.
Leading up to the gambling, were you aware of any other addictive behaviors that you had?
In fact, I would say even till this day, there are some that still come around, and it's still something that I have to understand. And I can also too, at times, fall in the trap of that thing. And but being through the gambling addiction and being through that experience, I can easily start to see it and become aware of it and start to pull myself and channel the energy into the right things, or the things that will allow me to advance, I should say, as opposed to bring me back. So yes, yes. So it is something that I have to deal with and accept on a daily basis.
Was your addiction ever covert, or was it always out in the open and overt?
No, it was definitely covert in many, and it caused me to do many things that caused a lot of harm, not only to myself, being dishonest with people, being dishonest in my relationships. I never got into like stealing or doing anything like that, but I was definitely one of the, when you gamble, you get yourself in position. So I was going out and taking out loans and digging a really big hole to get out of. And those things were covert, and those things were hidden a lot of the time. And they were absolutely destructive in every way during that time, at least.
How long were you covert in your behaviors until you got discovered?
I would say even after I got discovered, the addiction was it had such a grab on my life at the time that I was covert even after being discovered. And
Yeah.
I even went into a 12-step program, and right after going to the program, went and gambled. So that's how bad it got in terms of losing the connection with yourself. That's how bad it got at the time. And then you get to a place where you hit rock bottom and you realize that you just have to deal with it and you just have to accept it. And the first step to moving forward is accepting that, and accepting that you got to surrender. And so surrendering was the best thing that I could have done during that time. And it was pretty rough. It was a pretty rough time for me because I was going through the process of recovery and also going through the process of divorce. So I was having a lot, like it was a lot of emotional charges coming my way. And the divorce I was trying, or the marriage at the time, I was trying to hang on to as much as I could. And also I was trying to let go of addiction. So it was very confusing.
Was the addiction the cause of the breakup, or was the relationship already fractured before
It
the
was,
addiction?
I would say the addiction was the starting of the the relationship being dissolved, and then it kind of went back and forth. So it was me kind of starting it with the addictive behaviors and doing all the things that were harmful in the relationship, and then it caused her to act a certain way and kind of, I guess, get revenge for what I was doing too. So it was kind of going back and forth, which is totally like looking at it now, I totally understand that. And then when I was going through my recovery, one of the things that I had told her was I totally understand why this happened, and I'm just going to take responsibility for who I am and just apologize for the things that I've done. But obviously with that much, charges, it's hard to, for both parties, it's hard to reconcile that relationship.
How long had you guys been married?
We were married for about 4 years. We
Okay.
got married in 2007, and the my recovery took place in 2011, which also my divorce took place in 2011 as well.
Were you did you see yourself as an addict, a gambling addict prior to even having met your wife?
I would say addict, yes, not gambling addict
Okay.
at the time. But my my perspective on life, and I've learned to kind of get through this on a day-to-day basis, is I do have a very addictive personality. So I'm very aggressive in the things that I do, in terms of, and I want to be, it's kind of a double-edged sword. I want to be the best at what I do, and I want to be, I'll put all my energy into understanding it and making it effective in my life. Unfortunately, at the time, I was going through that with something negative like addiction. But it can also be a danger too, in the positive sense, like entrepreneurship and stuff like that. So it's something that I have to understand and work through daily.
Okay. Well, Cristian, I'm gonna share my perspective on what you just stated. Maybe this is an area that you and I will do some coaching work down the road, because I know this is not the first time I've heard someone describe their personality type as, I have a addictive personality type. That's just who I am. And I'm going to invite you to be open to look at this from a different perspective, because I'm not a big fan of labels these days. I think that labels define who we are, and they keep us trapped in the bondage of behavior and thought that no longer serves us in a healthy way. And so I would like to kind of share with you a different perspective on this statement, which is, what if we were to shift our mindset from saying, I tend to, the way you described it, I tend to go all in.
Right.
Instead of looking at it as a negative, as an addictive personality type or trait, to say, I am just a really passionate person.
Right.
And when I enjoy what I do, I love to do it. And I just get so focused on it, and I'm passionate about it. Now that to me is a really healthy, positive statement to embrace about ourselves, because when I hear I have addictive personality behavior, for me personally, now I'm speaking from having had 5 addictions of my own, and I'm addiction free today. I am no longer an addict, and I no longer see myself as having addictive personality behaviors. But what I do see myself as is what I believe in, I'm passionate about. Now, the opportunity comes in the area of balance.
Yeah.
In the area of, okay, so I'm passionate about doing this, and I'm all in, and I could perhaps spend too much time in that one area, and therein lies the work that we do in our personal life of balance, of consciousness, awareness, mindfulness, to understand that there are other parts of ourself and our relationships that we need to attend to. That unless we want to isolate ourselves in a bubble and just be surrounded by that one activity in life that we're passionate about, we have to be aware of how much time we're willing to commit to just for today. Now, I'm not talking about next week, next month, or next year. We just got to focus on today. And so for me, I set my intention in the morning. What is my intention for today? What is it that I want to get accomplished for myself? What is it that I'm willing to invest in self-care for myself? And how much time do I feel today I want to invest in my relationship with my partner, my friends, business, whatever it is. But it's just, I believe that it can be a conscious choice that we make. And through mindfulness and awareness, we can manage how we spend our time. And we don't have to accept or pronounce or identify that we have any type of negative behaviors associated with ourselves. We could just love ourselves as we are and shred those society labels that we are so quick to allow to be defining who we are. And so I'm going to invite you in this moment to take that statement back. Are you willing to do that for me, just to have some fun?
Absolutely. That's great.
Okay.
I love what you just said. And I appreciate it too. That was it's definitely an eye opener, you know. So there is a lot of learning through the addictive process, and even when you think you got it, you are, and if you're open to hearing more and understanding more, then the right information will come. And I think you just provided that.
See, yeah, I want to go in another part of this direction right now, is ask you, what do you think was precipitated the addiction? Have you gone deep within to your core to really explore? I like that, core to explore. We got to go to the core in order to explore what was the root behind the addiction. Because what I've learned in the process of doing 12-step work that I did for two of the different addictive behaviors that I had for decades, for many years, I had to be willing to not just keep the focus on arresting the addictive behavior and stopping it, but for me, see, that's the recovery piece. That's the recovery component of addiction, is stopping the behavior. And that's where 12-step work can do a good job if you're ready to do work. But once I was recovered, I wanted to heal. And the healing for me is when we go deep within and we attack the root. We look at what is the root behind the addiction, because the addiction is not the problem. It never is, and it never will be the problem. The addiction is just the symptom. And therein lies, a whole nother part of the conversation we will talk about, which is what works in 12-step and what does not work. And so, but going back to that question, what do you think? Do you have a sense as to what truly was behind you hitting that rock bottom?
Yeah.
And are you willing to share it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. I think it's pretty simple. It's connection. So it was for me, it was the lack of connection with many things. Self, one, the lack of connection to source, two, the lack of connection to relationships around me. And what I was searching for, instead of just connecting, I was searching for the solution for that. So with this too, one thing that I've learned for sure is that a lot of the pain will come from preventing something from happening. So it was me trying to prevent a connection, to isolate myself, that caused a lot of the pain within the addiction, which sounds kind of crazy, but it was me just saying, it was me saying, like, I don't know how to connect. And this is coming later. I don't know how to connect, but I want to connect to something that will replace that connection for me. And the easy way to do that is addiction. And the easy way to do that is with something that is outside of yourself, and something that doesn't really respond to what you are and who you are, to cause the mirror, so you can actually go and do the work within yourself also. So
yes. Yes.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah. So
that is so powerful.
That
is so powerful. Go ahead. Go on, please.
So, if you think of pain in general, like, people are, when the mirror is put up and they're looking at pain, they are repulsive to it. And when they repel it, they cause more of it. So this goes back into addiction too. So another way to kind of rephrase that and reframe that, so it's a fourth grade understanding, is you going out and saying, no, I'm not an addict. I don't want to become a gambler. I'm not a gambler, will cause more of you becoming a gambler. And so, and think of it like this too, when it comes to pain, like, you literally, and this is on the recovery side, pain, if you associate it with a negative thing, with a linear type thinking, like, there's pain and that's where I'm at. as opposed to there's pain and that's how I grow, you know? So the pain will actually cause, it's a dual thing, it's duality. The pain will actually cause growth. People go to the gym to cause pain so they can grow, you know? So what you're trying to do with the addiction is disconnect from the pain and prevent the pain from happening and put it into the addiction, and that actually causes more pain. So the way to get out of that is to accept the pain that's there and say, this pain is absolutely beautiful and I'm grateful for this pain. And that's kind of where I'm at, where I'm with my life right now, is I'm grateful for the addiction. I'm grateful for the process, and I can accept it. And then from there, I can move forward.
Beautiful. To paraphrase what, and you shared a lot in this segment right now, Cristian, but one of the things I heard you say, if I may, is that why you seeked out addiction in the first place was that you felt disconnected from people, places, and things, most importantly, probably yourself.
Yep.
And you were seeking answers to feel better about who you were, without really getting into the details as to what was behind all of that, which could be a whole nother show.
Yeah.
For sure, because we don't get to where we get without having a disconnection of some sort. And so for you, it was gambling, because as I heard you say, gambling kind of actually probably the adrenaline, and then the chemical reaction of the adrenaline and the dopamine kicked in, and each time you had a winning hand or a winning game, it fed your ego. It fed that part of yourself, of your being, that made you feel good about yourself. And in that moment, your self-esteem was now kind of inflated. But what we don't realize as we're in the addiction is that it's a false sense of self. It's temporary. It's not pure and authentic. It's false. It's a false sense. It's coming from the ego. It's not coming from the soul. And therein lies, so we're tricking ourselves into believing that we're getting our needs met because we're fueling it with our addiction. And it doesn't matter if it's gambling, if it's work, if it's I don't know about alcohol and drugs. I don't know if that can ever feed an ego in a positive way. I'm not sure, because I didn't have that addiction. So I can't speak for it, but I did have the work addiction. I don't think the food addiction was fueled that way, but I could tell you the sex addiction was, because there's definitely adrenaline and dopamine, a lot of chemicals being ignited in that moment when I was suffering with that addiction for decades. But you know what just hits me right now, Cristian, is that it's such a beautiful thing that you and I can be having this conversation right here, right now, speaking our truth, being real, not being afraid to share our backstory, because we are okay with who we are today.
Yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't mean that by any means like we're done healing. The healing process it's a process. It's a journey that I don't think we ever quite complete. And just when we think we have a layer and we're done with that, and it pops up for us again, another opportunity for further growth. But it's beautiful that two men can sit here and have this honest, open conversation, and do it in a way where, there's a saying, you may have heard this in some of your 12-step work, it's none of your business what you think of me. It's none of my business what you think of me. Meaning that I'm okay with who I am today.
Yeah.
And that backstory is part of who I am, because it's part of who I was. Right. But it's not it no longer defines me, because that's not how I choose to live my life today.
Yeah. Yep.
The big difference is that you hold yourself accountable. Right. Just by stepping forward and sharing your story in such a vulnerable way today it helps us continue the healing process.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. Even the experience that we had, you know, because I've never really spoke about it publicly, but I've spoke about it to many people, and I've been very open and transparent in regards to that with many people, even strangers at some point, but not publicly on video and you know, in a way where people are watching, which is a different, unique process, but it's also a very effective process in the healing. And it's been quite a while since I've been through this. It's been about 7 years now since I've been gamble free, but there's always something to learn. And as long as you keep the cup empty and you're open to being a student, you're open to learning, then there's room to learn. So
Amen.
this process in regards to healing, this process has been, in the last 40 or 30 minutes or so that we've been on, has been tremendous in regards to that.
Mm. Mm. Can you describe for me what's behind that? What is it? What are you feeling right now?
I can say one word: freedom. And if you are open enough to explain who you are, ooh.
I'm with you. I'm right here. I'm holding your hand, my friend. It's okay. It's a beautiful word, you know, and behind that word is a physical reaction that you're having right now. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Take a moment just to take a nice deep breath. Allow yourself to feel what you're feeling. Don't hold it back. It's when we hold it back that we stay further in the bondage of it. It's when we let it out that we have freedom. Yeah.
Yeah, that felt good.
Mm.
It's tears of joy, you know,
Yes.
and there's really nothing that will, what is coming to me? Freedom is such a powerful thing that is misunderstood in many ways, but it's a internal process, and
Mm.
the suffering will allow you to see where you are not free, and if you go inward, you can become free. And it felt really good to let that out right now. That's all, you know, that's all I
Yeah.
think. So
Yeah, they say we're only as sick as our secrets. And part of the
yeah.
healing process is when we step forward and push through the discomfort of doing something we haven't done before, like you acknowledging that you hadn't come on and spoken in such a public way.
Mm.
But through this discomfort, we feel lighter, and we feel that like we no longer have to hold on to that secret of ours, when in fact it isn't. It hasn't been, because you have come forward, you did 12-step work, you shared your story in the rooms of Gamblers Anonymous and wherever else you went. But it brings it to a whole other level. It brings it to a level of a higher, I say, vulnerability and authenticity, when we're willing to step forward and just speak our truth and acknowledge it and hold ourselves accountable for it. And I want you to know that the comments have been lighting up, and everyone is with you and I in this moment. I'm going to post a few that are resonating with me right here, right now.
Great.
The first one I'm going to post comes in from Mary, who says, as a child, most of us detach from our souls when we had a trauma or an experience. As adults now, we're still that wounded child trying to connect back to our souls, our true self. And therein lies, I love that statement that Mary shared, because therein lies, from my experience of my own healing journey, is when we shift the recovery work, is basically getting the addiction under control. And
Yep.
the healing work is when we shift from recovery into going deep diving within to reconnect, to come home to
Yeah.
ourselves
Yep.
and no longer beat ourselves up, living in guilt and shame, anger and resentment, blame, regret, any of those, all of those, or any of those negative emotions that are toxic to our soul and that keep us living in the bondage. And when we're willing to do the work, like you said, we go to the gym to build muscle. Well, Lisa Nichols, who's been one of my mentors and coaches over the last couple of years, she speaks it so eloquently. She says, we have to build the soul muscle too.
Yeah.
We've
Yeah. That's
ignored
great.
soul muscle for decades. A lot of us detached from who we are at the core, at our soul, at our root, when we have been hit with trauma or wounds as that younger person, and then we attach to addictions to feel better about who we are. But our growth process stops. It's like we freeze, we're paralyzed in that moment from that trauma or wound.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is that when we do the healing work, we begin to understand who we are and come home to ourselves. And for the first time, maybe in our adult life, begin to like who we are, eventually learning how to fall in love
Yeah.
with ourselves. And so that's the work that we are doing. That's the work I know you and Amber are doing, and others that are on a healing journey and part of the Quantum Revolution Tour. And I am going to post something that someone that I know is important in your world says. She said, so beautiful, so inspiring. You guys are paving the way. That's from Amber. And I'd like to also, how's that feel right now to hear that?
It's amazing. It's amazing. And there's definitely one person on the planet to hear those words from that hit hard, you know. So, and she's that person.
Yeah. So what I'd like to do is kind of transition a little bit here and shift into the 12 steps.
Okay.
Because you mentioned it to me. We've touched on it very briefly, but I'd love for you to share with me what your experience with has been with your own recovery work and how the 12-step program worked for you, and what is your relationship with the rooms today, and what was your takeaway?
Yeah, so it was a great crutch, and there's a lot of I think it's definitely a great way to start and could be necessary. I don't know exactly, but I would say that it was a great way for me to start the recovery process. The problem with it is that people use it as a crutch and they stick to it as a crutch. They say, I am this person for the rest of my life. I've got to go to these meetings in order to defeat the recovery or to defeat the addiction. And that's not going back to what you said earlier. It's not necessarily true. The label of that will keep you trapped. So everybody's a little bit different, I think, and everybody will use it for however long they need to use it for. I think there will come a point in somebody's life. There was a point that came to me in my life where I said, I am free, and I can be 100% completely surrounded by the addiction. In fact, till this day, I'm saturated with it by living in Las Vegas, you know, and I'm okay. I can walk into a casino and not want to gamble and not want to and control myself enough to where I don't have the urges. I know the consequences that come with that. And I don't even get the urge to gamble when I walk into a casino. At that point, you can truly say that you are free. And what happens with the 12-step course is it keeps you from getting into recovery, and in between that gap to where you're free and where you're not, to where you're kind of stuck as even the label of a recovered addict, as opposed to true freedom, where you can be saturated in the environment that was your addiction and not want to do and live as your true authentic self, not wanting to do the things that cause so much harm.
I'm pausing because I'm giving you an opportunity to tell me more.
Oh, okay. So, yeah. So for me, that process was understanding, the 12-step program jump started me to understanding who I was. And then once I broke free of that, I knew who I was. So, and I am 100% truly free in regards to that. And I can live within passion and purpose. And part of my passion and purpose on this planet today is to get my story out, to be truthful and transparent in regards to that, and also help other people to get there too.
Do you see yourself as being a recovered addict, or do you see yourself as, when I say see yourself, do you identify to yourself and to others as a recovered gambling addict, or do you see yourself as an individual who, I had a gambling behavior, but I am no longer an addict? Where are you in relationship to those two statements today?
I would say number two, I would say I was an individual that had a gambling pattern, and it's not who I am today. And it's, what do I search for? I search for freedom and passion, as opposed to something that will destroy. And within that too, the micro within that is, within freedom and passion, you're going to find things that will get you to the next step. So I do think my thinking process is not necessarily linear in terms of that, but it's also understanding that there is a linear perspective at points. So it gets pretty deep, but I would say that I'm an individual that's passionate and also free.
I love that. When you shared about your experience with the 12-step rooms, I really could relate to it. I spent about 4 plus 2.5, almost 7 years in 2 different programs. And with the amount of meetings, especially in the last 12-step rooms I went into, I was going to 2 meetings a day, 7 days a week for the first year. And there were days when I needed a 3rd meeting. So what I did in the first 2 years maybe was equivalent to 5 or 6 years for the average person. I went all in because for me it was life or death. If I didn't get my addiction under control, I was going to die.
Yep.
And that addiction was not alcohol and drugs, it was codependency. I was hooked. And I needed to break the cycle, and I couldn't do it on my own. Right. I was too ill. I was too damaged at that point. But here's my takeaway on my experience with the 12-step rooms. For me, this is my experience. The 12-step room saved my life. The second one was Al-Anon. I have no problem saying what it was. And it was primarily for my codependency to other people in my life that I deeply cared about. That program saved my life. If I hadn't taken that program seriously and shown up 365 in the first year, we probably wouldn't be here today having this conversation. I have no doubt I would not be alive. It saved my life, as does the other 12-step programs help save people's lives when they are ready to do the work.
Yep.
Yeah, however, at some point in my recovery, I realized that I was recovered, that I had reached that point where I had maxed out in my recovery, and I needed and wanted more. And I wasn't able to get it in those rooms because for me, there's only 12 steps. And the 12 steps are the 12 steps of recovery to basically stop the behavior. I needed the second 12, and they aren't second 12s. They just keep going back and repeating the same steps. And part of that repeating is you keep going back and hearing the same stories over and over and over again. And for some people, it works. But for me, I needed more. I wanted more because once I was recovered and I understood now I'm starting the healing process, I no longer wanted to walk in and listen to the toxic, sad stories over and over again. And I didn't want to hear myself repeating my same story over and over again. I didn't have to do it anymore. What I wanted in my life was to up-level my healing and go deep within and work on the soul work, because I understood at some point that my addiction was not my problem. My problem is that I had a wounded soul that needed repair. And so once I understood that, my whole world blew wide open and everything changed in my life. The next level of change was that I realized I was no longer an addict. I no longer needed to raise my hand and identify as an addict of any sort, whether it be work, cigarette smoking, my food addiction, my sex addiction, or my codependency. I was free. And what gave me that freedom was I started to seek resources outside of the 12-step rooms, because I realized that there was a whole world out there available that I wasn't seeking because I was spending all my free time in the rooms. Yeah, absolutely. Once I blew that open and realized, and I clicked on YouTube and I started finding resources, people that had more wisdom and knowledge and intuition and awareness and mindfulness than that I had, that they can become my teachers and mentors and coaches. And then I found my next level of spirituality, because most of the 12-step rooms are based on the spiritual program. Right. But I found a higher connection through the spiritual center in Culver City called Agape Spiritual Center. Michael Beckwith is the founder of the Agape Spiritual Center. And I was fortunate enough to live within about a 45-mile drive from my home in California. So I started going to the services every single Sunday. And then there were weeks where I was popping in on Wednesday. And he really helped connect me to the higher level of self and spirit and the universe and the divine, whatever we want to call it, Allah, Jesus, Jesus, God. It doesn't matter. I was able to find a connection and really reach the next level. And so it's just been a process that I've been blessed with, because I was willing to step outside, take what I like, and I left the rest. And what I liked was it saved my life. But at some point I needed more, I wanted more. And then the universe opened the doors for me to find it. And amazing. So we have that in common. Yeah. It's quite a process. I love looking back at it now. It's been one of the most, if not the most impactful things that's ever happened in my life. And I love, and I'm totally grateful for every moment that happened within that. And you know, it led me to all the wonderful things that are in my life now, including freedom, including my wife, including the relationships that I've had, you know, including the abilities that I have and the resources that I have, and to my true passion and purpose on this planet. And I can live in that space from here on out. I'd like to share one more comment, or really it's a question from someone in the community. Great. And invite you to respond, and then we'll go from there. Lacey says, what helped you break free, not needing the support of a group? And I'm gonna invite you to respond. I believe I shared my perspective on that. Well, I think as I was going through the recovery within the 12-step, I was also seeking spiritual and self-development in general. And what I realized is that the 12-step is not needing support of a group
I would imagine that that's the 12-step group or any other group. And I came to the point where I realized that everything is within. So I realized that what I need to do is the work on the inside to reflect the outside. And I was doing it backwards within the group. I was doing the work on the outside to hopefully try to change within. And I came to that point and I realized, and I had a breakthrough, that everything on the inside I was doing was projecting outwards, and therefore I did not need the support of the group. I just need to care for myself and do the work on the inside.
Now, that didn't necessarily putting yourself in a space of isolation.
Right.
Am I correct in saying that you found other resources where you were able to connect with people to continue your growing journey, not necessarily within the walls of a 12-step room now?
Correct. So I started looking into, one of the things that really broke me free was understanding energy and communication. So understanding that communication is one of my most, one of the areas at the time in my life where I was not free, and I had to exercise my ability to communicate in regards to relationships, in regards to business, in regards to myself also. So I started understanding the dynamics within communication and my creativity and my ability to transfer ideas from the inside out. And that was a breakthrough for me in terms of, and this is more on the self-development side, not necessarily addiction, but also within the addiction too, because being transparent, if there's a conflict between two people and it causes a disconnection, the bridge between that conflict is simply communication. So, and also too, if you look at it on the macro level, like a lot of the problems in the world are caused because the lack of communication. A good example would be wars. One of the first things that happens between a war between two countries is they cut communications. And nobody wants to go to war and cause harm to another person unless the belief systems are so off and there's no communication to bind those belief systems together. And really that's what happens with addiction too, is the communication with yourself is cut. So the connection is not there, and the connection with others is not there. And what you're doing is you're putting that energy into the addiction, and then moving into 12-step, you're putting that energy into the 12-step and not yourself.
People in the rooms would maybe take offense to that and argue that point and say, well, that's not true. When you're doing a 12-step work, you're looking within yourself. How is that
Right.
different than what you're saying?
You're looking within yourself, but from the outside perspective in, and not from the inside perspective out. So, and really, because you're in a very vulnerable position, and that's why it's kind of a step process. It's kind of, you get to the point within the 12 steps that you need to go and not take the information from outside inwards. You take the information inside and project it outwards.
Rebecca says, as has been stated by Jay, go to the core to explore.
There you go.
And communication of the heart, as she says, I like to say communication of the soul. I wore this shirt with intention today. I originally had on choose gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
And then I took it off and I changed it to choose courage, because before we can go to gratitude, we have to have the courage to change.
Yeah.
We have to have the courage to make whatever we have to do to heal our minds, our bodies, and our souls. Without that, we're just living in the muck of pain, wounds, and all those negative toxic emotions that we talked about earlier today. But through courage and pushing through the discomfort that we feel, whether it be showing up, walking into a 12-step meeting, or reaching out to a resource that may be a therapist or a coach, a friend, a mentor, wherever you find a place where you are able to raise your hand and say, I surrender. I need help. I want help. I'm willing to do and to go to any length to get relief so that I can get some recovery, so that I can then begin to heal. Because the ultimate goal is this, I believe, is we all want the same thing in life. We want to love and we want to be loved.
Yep.
Without conditions and without judgment. And what that takes is courage. But I have met so many amazing, beautiful people, Cristian, just like you.
Thank you.
That have shown up for themselves and show up for the people through modalities like showing up on a show like we're doing today, that are then able to pay it forward, to give other people inspiration that it's possible to heal. It's possible to shred your addiction. It's possible to no longer feel what I felt for decades of my life. For 54 years, I had this feeling within myself. I refer to it as the black hole. I don't know if you're familiar with that saying or not.
Yep.
Did you ever have that feeling within, like no matter what you did or didn't do, there was always this empty feeling inside?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the only thing that will replace that is the journey inward. Because it's not an outside force that will bring that feeling to your life. It's an internal process. And there's really no, until you get it right with yourself, there's no relationship, there's nothing that will provide that. And it sounds kind of selfish, but explore it. I encourage those that are watching this to explore the journey inward and to understand that, and then the doors will open on the outside and you'll be able to show up for those things and also provide for those things on the outside once you get it right on the inside.
Cristian, we are at the hour. It's a high noon out in Southern California.
All right.
And in Las Vegas. If you have an extra few minutes for us to just stay in the studio just for a few, if that's okay. If it's not, Absolutely. That's okay too. You got a few?
Yeah, that sounds
okay.
Good.
We have about 25 people that have been with us on the live feed.
Nice.
And close to 100 people that have been on my watch show with me and with you. And it's been a beautiful show. Right. Each show is so unique and so special because what I've learned is that we all have our own backstory that is so unique and special to us because it's ours. But here's what I also know is although I, at times when I say it that way, it's ours, it feels like I'm saying I own it. What I own it's the backstory, but it doesn't define who I am today.
Right.
But if I hadn't gone through that pain, if I hadn't gone through those traumas, if I hadn't gone through all of the darkness of the night, the darkness of the soul, and felt that black hole for 54 years of my life, we wouldn't be here today having this conversation, you know? And so we get what we get when we show up.
Absolutely.
How are you feeling in this moment? I know earlier I asked you that question and you said freedom.
Yeah.
You're the second guest. I had a guest on last week. She was coming in overseas and I asked her how she was feeling and she screamed out the word freedom. Actually, she was coming in from North Carolina. I believe it was Lisa Williams, who had been in a cult for a couple of decades or close to 2 decades with her husband and 12 children. And I asked her how she felt because this was the first time she was stepping forward into a studio. Wow. And she screamed out, she raised her arms and she screamed out freedom.
Yep. Yeah, I can relate with that. It's a beautiful thing. It's a very fulfilling thing. And the ability to get the word out and to inspire others to become free there's no other it's an amazing feeling. There's no way to even describe it. You can't bring words to it, but all I can say is that it's love, and it's amazing.
Speaking of love, could you share a little bit about how you got there to a place of self-love, and how much did self-care fall into that? Mm-hmm. And what type of self-care do you do for yourself today?
Yeah, so it was a process, and it was the process of going to rock bottom and everything that we discussed that led me to that door. And I can honestly say right now that, and I've even done studies, and I had mentors that taught me kind of what this means and the process behind this and the thinking behind this. But I live my life as a vehicle right now. That means that I try to be in the moment, in the present moment, as much as possible. And there is really a perspective of understanding that the negative things are only there for the positive, and the negative things are only there to serve the positive. And I wrote a quote about 2 years ago, and I live by this quote on a daily basis. And it's basically saying that everything is light, that the only thing that exists is light, and shadows are not made from other shadows. So the shadows are only purposely put there by the light, and cleverly put there by the light. So not to get wrapped up in this linear positive negative thing that's happening, but to understand that everything is expanding, and that you're just a part of the process with the expansion, and you're part of the universe with the expansion, and to really look at it as a vehicle. And then you can start to balance out the polarity when it comes to that. So I try to live my life as a vehicle to the fullest right now. And there's no way to really override the fact that there is a positive and a negative. It's just the perspective of which you choose to look at things. And I choose to look at things as a vehicle, which means I choose to look at things from the perspective that I want. And that perspective, the choice is a good thing that's happening in my life.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Cristian. I'd like to ask you to maybe take just a few moments here to talk a little bit about the work that you are doing today for yourself and for others, and a little bit also on what the quantum revolution tour is, and why anyone would want to consider spending just a couple of $100 or so to invest in themselves and their soul.
Yeah, so what I'm doing today, it's an ongoing process. Every day it's something new. Every day I love, and I'm very passionate about learning. And I think that that's a requirement for me in my life. Like every day I spend a dedicated amount of time learning new things and implementing new things. And my passion and purpose on this planet for what I'm doing, and it completely aligns with Quantum Revolution Tour, is to break the chains and to bring in the highest level of freedom for as many individuals as I can, to inspire them to get that freedom. And I can only show them the tools that are at will to bring that freedom into your life. And part of the things that we teach within Quantum is to grab hold of those tools. Within 3 days, you're able to grab hold of those tools and also understand them, but not from a perspective of knowledge, from a perspective of experience and knowledge, which translates and converts into wisdom. So within the Quantum Revolution Tour, there's a lot of underlying factors that happen to bring in the experience. And there's different technologies that are in place, different modalities, and what I'll be teaching on stage is really understanding the subconscious and the access into the subconscious, and how to understand and communicate with the subconscious, which is theta modalities. So it's understanding the programs that are running underneath the surface, beyond the veil, the energetic things that are happening that are controlling somebody's life, and how to shake hands with it, and how to get it to give you the things that you want from the physical perspective. So we're going to do, with my session, talk a lot about freedom, and we're going to talk a lot about how to break the patterns and the code that's running using theta, and also muscle testing, and how to understand yourself in that regard. The things that you cannot see on the physical, so belief systems and things of that nature, and how you can actually start to work with those things and see results in the things that you would like in your life, if you're ready for them. Because there's a lot of moving pieces to that, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you're going to be as part of the tour group. There's 5 or 6 others, other individuals that are on their own healing journey, mm-hmm. that have, let's say, mastered a technique or a tool, and the other people that are going to be there with you are going to be stepping forward and sharing their healing modality to help coach and guide us as attendees to walk through the process in the moment. Something you said that resonated with me is that it's not just it's just not the knowledge, it's actually applying the knowledge in the moment, in the experience of it. Mm-hmm. It brought me to thinking about Dick and Bettinger has been a guest on Real Men, Real Talk Raw 2 times now. And I met him at a retreat that he was part of, a workshop, 2.5, 3-day workshop out in Southern Cal and Malibu, mm-hmm. a couple of years ago. And his story is such that he was a psychologist for 40 plus years. And he had a whole room filled with bookcase after bookcase filled with books. Not because he didn't feel like he knew enough to help his clients or his patients, as it's referred to in the biz, but because he still was seeking his own answers. He still felt empty. He didn't have his answers for himself. And he's come on and he said, Jay, you don't understand. I had so much knowledge and so much information, but I didn't have anything. I was lacking. And I'm paraphrasing his words. But what he also said, that he got so addicted to meditation. 2 hours, 1 hour a day wasn't enough. 2 hours a day at some point wasn't enough. 3 hours wasn't enough. 4 hours of meditation a day was still not enough for him, until he finally found his answers. For him, his answers was a whole nother way of living, a whole nother philosophy called the 3 Principles, which was started by Sidney Banks, a gentleman who's no longer with us today, but he's originally from Europe. But it's just a beautiful thing when we understand that we could have a lot of books and we could take a lot of courses, but until we start applying and practicing and going within to do the work alongside and really honing in and being honest and truthful and vulnerable with ourselves and sharing all of our darkest secrets, that there's not enough books out there that's going to heal you. There's not enough highlight pens that's going to make a difference. You could change the color of the pen, you could change the color of the highlighter. It's not going to give you the freedom.
And this circles back to the 12-step question earlier in the show. Is like, all of the knowledge within that room will not give you that freedom. It's going to come from within. But there is a very good bridge between knowledge and experience that can work with each other. So like with the tour too, is we'll give the knowledge, but we'll also create an experience that will hopefully translate and convert into your wisdom at the end of the tour to apply within your life, to break all the chains, to break all the things that keep you stuck and trapped and in bondage when it comes to living the life that you truly want to live.
And so I've got a number of friends that were attendees at the Miami tour in the fall. Barbara Taylor, who has been a
She's
big part
awesome.
of Spirituality Gone Wild.
Yeah.
She was there. Donald Schur,
Oh,
who,
he's great too.
he was there, and he's
Yeah.
been on my show twice now. And I've met all of the members on the team. I believe I think you were the last to come forward and step into the studio.
Awesome.
I actually sent Jessica a private message last evening and said, I have an idea. I'd love to have another show. Now that you've all come on and shared parts of your own backstory and your healing journeys, I'd love to have all of you come on as a panel, and maybe we just get together and just continue the conversation as a group leading up to the tour. And so I hope that we can put that together in the near future. And I'm excited because I'm coming in as an attendee. I'm going to be there to be open to receive and to grow and to continue my healing journey. And I'm excited to meet all of you that today have stepped forward in your own healing and come in to participate in this show that means so much to me, whether it be this show or Real People, Real Stories. It's been beautiful getting to know you and Amber and Jennifer. And who else did I miss? You, Amber, Jennifer, and Jessica. And Frank Lyford as well. And of course, the Donald Schur. And so I'm excited to have the opportunity to see you face to face and to touch you and give you a beautiful hug, a soul connection from me to you, brother.
Thank you.
And I'm just so excited for the dates to arrive so I can get to the next level of my own healing and participate and help those that are ready to do the work.
I'm very excited too. I can't wait. It's approaching quick, and I'm looking forward to that day, very much so.
So if you are listening to our conversation and you are interested to learn more about the tour, you can reach out to either Cristian or myself through private message. We can send you a link to sign up. It's still early enough. We're almost out of time as far as getting the special price on the hotel if you choose to stay at the Red Rock Canyon Resort.
And ends on the 20th, so 2 days from now. You can get quite a deal, and believe me, it's worth every penny. It's worth its weight in gold. The experience that you walk away with from that, and just allowing yourself to invest and to get what it is that comes out of that tour is transformative. I said after the first tour, this is not changing my life, but changing my lifetimes. So that's how impactful it was to me.
I think I spelled it right. Quantum Revolution Tour.
Yeah.
And they could go .com on that. I love what you just said, that how it's impacted your life. When we show up, and if we just show up willing and wanting it, change is inevitable. We will get what we need. They're saying the teacher shows up when the student is ready.
Yep. Very true.
And so with that, Cristian, I'd like to just invite you just to take just a few minutes here to maybe put a bow on the show and share some closing words of wisdom that somebody may need to hear you share, that may be suffering and in pain right now. I invite you to do that, just that.
Yeah, so just take a moment and relax and understand that the pain is only there for you to grow, and that it is a part of the process. And I invite you to just love the process and accept it for what it is, and start to take the next steps in your journey. And within that, you will start to open the doors to true freedom. And I'll leave it at that. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. With that, I'm going to allow those to be the parting words of the show. I don't need to say anything more other than thank you for showing up for yourself today, and for those that heard something they needed to hear. I so much appreciate your vulnerability and coming from the space that you showed up in today.
Thank you.
And I thank you for that. And I look forward to seeing you on a future show and in Vegas on March 22nd through the 24th. And with that, thanks for joining me on Real Men, Real Talk, Raw. we'll catch you next Friday night. This Friday night, we got a special show coming on. It's not going to be this format. I'm going to be doing a show with Debbie, Real People, Real Stories, Raw. Christy Marie is going to be the special guest. I am not going to divulge or disclose what her backstory is, but it is a very powerful story. And she is an absolutely beautiful woman that will be stepping into the studio from Bend, Oregon. And I'm excited to have her in the studio. I will announce the time later in the week. I don't believe it's going to be in the evening. I think it's going to be about 11 a.m. your time, same time, 2 o'clock East Coast time. That'll be Friday afternoon. And with that, thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time on Real Men, Real Talk Raw.
Thanks, guys.